Namaste all, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are on page 369, Brahman Purusha Ishvara, beginning with the sentence, if we regard this aspect of the one reality, page 369. Brief synopsis?
Yes.
Good.
As I say, we are having this session once per week. So by the time we come back after 7 days, we forget the link and what has been said earlier. So I'll just give you a brief overview and then I'll tell you the summary of what you said earlier. And then we get the link and then we'll read what we have to read today. So the chapter is Brahman Purusha Ishvara Maya Prakriti Shakti. Everything from supermind downwards, all the planes of consciousness, all the planes are relative. There is nothing absolute. In other words, there is nothing fixed. It depends on your view, it depends on who is seeing, it depends from where you are seeing. The view changes and your values also keep on changing. This is the basic thing. So, in the spiritual planes of consciousness, you have the Brahman, Purusha, Ishvara. So, Brahman is the consciousness which is the impersonal aspect of the divine. Your mind becomes silent, your consciousness or soul escapes from the body-mind life, the prison and the cage of body-mind life, it goes up and you feel yourself to be outside your body and you experience usually the Brahman consciousness. And what is that Brahman consciousness? Something which is absolutely still, no movement at all, and immutable, infinite, eternal, but the most important thing, absolutely free of all features, no characteristics. It's something that you can't describe, indescribable. Its only thing which you can insist to yourself is absolutely real. So real is it that the rest of all seems to be unreal. It's usually followed by the experience of the world being only a shadow play of images with no reality at all.
But this is what many have realized.
Yes.
In Buddhistic
Oh yes.
terms.
It's not at all an uncommon thing. It's a very common thing. It is common in the spiritual field. Not for normal man, but common for the spiritual. And this is the first plane in the spiritual planes after you are free from your body-mind life. So that's a Brahman consciousness. But that's not the only thing. Those who go up to the Brahman consciousness think that the divine is formless. You have the Islamic theory that there is no form to God. You have the Arya Samaj in India which says that there is no form to God. There are many others also who say God is, if you think of God as a person, it's just a product of your fancy and your imagination. There is nothing true about it. So, of course, Hindu doesn't agree and Hinduism also doesn't agree. The next is the Purusha aspect. The Purusha aspect is you feel that the consciousness, there is a conscious being. So you could say in a certain way it is the personal aspect. The Purusha consciousness. Then you go to the next level, the third level, and that is the Purushottama or the Ishvara consciousness, Brahman Purusha Ishvara, and he combines in himself both all the aspects. It's impossible for man to imagine something being formless and with form, but mind is limited. If you go beyond the mind, it becomes quite conceivable and also you can have the experience of it. So this is the so far as the Brahman Purusha Ishvara is concerned. Now the other part is the Maya Prakriti Shakti. So this is the all starting from consciousness force. In Sanskrit you use the word Chit Shakti. Consciousness is there and force is there. At the highest level they are one. The consciousness has got power inbuilt into it at the highest level. As it keeps coming down, the principle of the one becoming the many starts becoming a fact. And so consciousness and Shakti and force also divide themselves and become separate. I may be conscious of something, but I may not have the power. I may have the power, but I don't have the knowledge and the consciousness. That's Here it is like that. So, when you are experiencing the Brahman, you see the physical world as Maya. You see it as empty of forms and unreal. It's not that you don't see the world. You see the world, but the forms have no substance, no reality. They are like silhouettes. This is the experience, and whole Buddhistic philosophy is based on that. Okay. Then, if you, as I told you, it's all relative and depends on who is experiencing and how you are experiencing. At another level, or it even may be the same level but from another perspective, if you are experiencing the Purusha consciousness, the physical world appears to you as a play of mechanical unconscious forces. This is Prakriti. The Purusha is the conscious being and the physical world is mechanical unconscious energy. Examples, the river flowing. There is nothing, it's just a universal flow of water. The wind is blowing. Okay, this is all, the sunshine is there, but there is nobody there. Nobody is creating the sunshine. It's just by itself. So this is the Purusha and Prakriti aspect. When you go to the highest level of the Ishvara consciousness, all these dualities get completely harmonized. So in Sri Aurobindo language, it would be the supermind, and in the Gita, it is the Purushottama. Okay, and you also use the word Ishvara, the supreme being. He is a being as well as he is impersonal, together. And at that time, Shakti, the force, is seen as his own force. At the other level, there is a difference between consciousness and force, but at that highest level, this force that he has is his own force, and he has full control over it. This is basically what he has said, what the chapter is all about. Then, I read out the summary of what he said in the previous para. The idea of a supreme person creates a problem for the human mind because we immediately, by the way, this is my own language, it's not Sri Aurobindo's language, I am just summarizing what he has said in the previous one. The idea of a supreme person creates a problem for the human mind because we immediately transfer to him our ideas of a human ruler, a king. We attribute to him the qualities we understand a human ruler must have. He can make a mental decision, and he has a mental decision making capacity, and he has also got an arbitrary will. This is what you transfer to the divine. We conceive of him as omnipotently imposing his ideas and laws on the world, and his decisions as his caprice. Without any reason, he is just making laws and imposing them on human beings. But this is obviously not the truth, because he is not limited by mind or will. His is a universal consciousness and a divine wisdom with which he works out the truths of all things. His view is integral. He sees the truth, the inner significance, the essence, the purpose and the possibilities of all things, and coordinates all this omnisciently and omnipotently. There is no arbitrariness in anything he does. He acts by laws through nature, but these laws are not arbitrary. They are the natural truth of things, but he can override the laws when required. Okay? Normally you would attribute the action of grace to that. The divine grace can override the laws that he himself has made. Okay?
Even karma.
Even overriding the karma. That's right. But there's always a sufficient ground for that to occur. Even in the karma, you will have to undergo the consequences of your, let us put it in a very crude manner, your wrong actions. Okay, because everything, ultimately there is nothing wrong or right. Everything is relative. What one considers wrong, someone else can consider quite okay. When someone is doing something right, it can be considered quite wrong by others. So it's a relative matter. So, but the divine finds some ground for bestowing his grace on the individual in particular, overriding the laws of karma. That's possible. So, man views God as either anthropomorphic or mechanical, but God is both and beyond both. In anthropomorphism is, as we said last time, is the attribution of human qualities to that which is not human. So it could be God. Okay, you are attributing his. Man is jealous, man is weak, man is also has got a will. Okay, man is choosing. All these things you attribute to the divine, or you can even attribute it to animals. That also is possible. Tom and Jerry. Okay, the Panchatantra. Okay, Aesop's fables. These are all anthropomorphism. So Srimde is saying that man views God as either anthropomorphic or mechanical and impersonal. There is no common ground, either this or that. But God is both and beyond both. His action is law and logic of the infinite. When man is using logic of the finite, he is looking at things in a very, very finite and limited manner. But God is not limited by mental logic. That's what he said in the previous para. Now we read the para that we have to read today. Okay? I read the whole para first. If we regard this aspect of the one reality and put it in close connection with the other aspects, we can get a complete view of the relation between the eternal self-existence and the dynamics of the consciousness force by which it manifests the universe. If we place ourselves in a silent self-existence, immobile, static, inactive, it will appear that a conceptive consciousness force, Maya, able to effectuate all its conceptions, a dynamic consort of the self of silence, is doing everything. It takes its stand on the fixed, unmoving, eternal status and casts the spiritual substance of being into all manner of forms and movements to which its passivity consents, or in which it takes its impartial pleasure, its immobile delight of creative and mobile existence. Whether this be a real or an illusory existence, that must be its substance and significance. Consciousness is at play with being. Force of nature does what it wills with existence and makes it the stuff of her creations. But secretly, the consent of the being must be there at every step to make this possible. There is an evident truth in this perception of things. It is what we see happening everywhere in us and around us. It's a truth of the universe and must answer to a fundamental truth aspect of the Absolute. But when we step back from the outer dynamic appearances of things, not into a witness silence, but into an inner dynamic participating experience of the spirit, we find that this consciousness force, Maya, Shakti, is itself the power of the being, self-existent, the Ishvara. The being is Lord of her and of all things. We see him doing everything in his own sovereignty as the creator and ruler of his own manifestation. Or, if he stands back and allows freedom of action to the forces of nature and her creatures, his sovereignty is still intact in the permission, at every step, his tacit sanction, let it be so, tathastu, is there implicit, for otherwise nothing could be done or happen. Being and its consciousness force, spirit and nature cannot be fundamentally dual. What nature does is really done by the spirit. This too is a truth that becomes evident when we go behind the veil and feel the presence of a living reality which is everything and determines everything, is the all-powerful and the all-ruler. This too is a fundamental truth aspect of the Absolute. Much of it is what we discussed earlier, the Brahman, Purusha, Ishvara, Maya, Prakriti, Shakti. Depending at how you are experiencing this reality will be your experience. Okay, so we go back to the beginning of the para. So, if we regard this aspect of the one reality and put it in close connection with the other aspects, we can get a complete view of the relation between the eternal self-existence and the dynamics of the consciousness force by which it manifests the universe. So the one reality is in the Advaita view, and Sri Aurobindo follows the Advaita view, the Vedantic view, is that there is one reality, supreme reality, and that's the last. Beyond that there is nothing else, and that is Sat Chit Ananda. Sat is substance, which is subtle, and he is using the word existence for that. So we'll go into a little bit into that also. Then there is Chit Shakti. Chit is consciousness, and there is also bliss. So at the highest level, all these three are not three different things, or even four if you bring force in, but it is one. It's a substance which is conscious of itself. It's got the power to do whatever it wants with its own substance, and it is also enjoying what it is doing. So this is the Satchidananda, Sat Chit Ananda. Okay? So now he is saying that these things, they come down and they take various stances, if you want, various statuses at the lower levels. So if we see all of them, then you will get the full picture. Otherwise, you will be only seeing part of it, and you will come to conclusions which are partial. They are true, but they are partial, not the complete truth. So, if we regard this aspect of the one reality with an R cap and put it in close connection with the other aspects, we can get a complete view of the relation between what? Eternal self-existence and the dynamics of the consciousness force. So, eternal self-existence, that substance which is subtlest and from which the world is made. In our physical world, the substance that is very, very commonly seen and is matter. But matter can take so many different forms. But this is gross matter. But at the highest level, this becomes the subtlest of matter. It is so subtle that the word ether is used for it, and science says that there is nothing like ether because there is nothing. It is so subtle that you can't even say there is anything. So it is that which is the subtlest, which is self-existence. Okay. It is the, in the Sankhya philosophy, it is the pradhana, it is the main substance from which everything else is made. And it has necessarily to be featureless. It has to be absolutely without features so that it can become any feature. If it had features, the creation would be limited to those features. So therefore it has to be featureless. The creation in the physical world is infinite. Anything God wants, He can do. So that is the eternal self-existence. Note the word self-existence. This substance has not been created by anybody. It is existing by itself. Self-existence. Okay? Then, and the dynamics of the consciousness force. So consciousness force, Chit Shakti. The consciousness is a force. But as they keep coming down, consciousness separates itself from force. So what is the relation between Sat, Chit, Shakti, Ananda? He is going to discuss. That's what he is going to say. Okay? We can get a complete view of the relation between the eternal self-existence and the dynamics of the consciousness force by which it manifests the universe. Now, unless consciousness and force act together, there can be no manifestation. There can be no creation. Consciousness tells you how to do and what to do, and force is the one that actually executes it and makes it. It is like you can use an image in the physical world. Okay, I want to make a car. Okay, I want to make a car. What do I need? I need steel. I need maybe glass, plastics, and all this. This is the material. It is the substance. I need someone who knows how to make the car. Okay, knowledge, consciousness. Then I need also labor and force. So that is the force aspect. So exactly the same process is being done in the physical world when you want to create something, but that at the highest level is at the supreme level. Consciousness and force coming together creates everything. If only force is creating, it may be a chaotic creation because there is no consciousness, there is no direction. It is, if only knowledge is there, it knows what to do, but there is no force, there cannot be any creation. So consciousness and force have to come together to create the world. At the highest level, since they are one, they can do it. But when it comes down here, it seems to separate. Force is not always conscious, okay? And consciousness is sometimes, you may be fully conscious of something, but you may not have the force to do what you want to do. So they are two separate things. If we place ourselves, now he is telling you what you can experience. If you experience only the Sat, if you experience only the consciousness, if you experience only the force and the Supreme, that's what he is going to discuss now. If we place ourselves in a silent self-existence, which is immobile, static, inactive, it will appear that a conceptive consciousness force, Maya, able to perpetuate all its conceptions, a dynamic consort of the self of silence, is doing everything. So, what he is saying, if we place ourselves, if you have the spiritual power, you can place yourself, but otherwise, if you have the experience of the silent self-existence, immobile, static, inactive. So, that is the Brahman consciousness. The Brahman consciousness is immobile, it is static, okay, and inactive. Sarda is using three words: immobile, static, inactive. It will appear that a conceptive consciousness force, Maya, able to effectuate all its conceptions, a dynamic consort of the self of silence. He is using the word consort because usually it is considered that Purusha is male. There is no gender there at the highest level, and Prakriti is the female aspect of the divine. You could say in a certain sense this, why they do that, because it's a female that actually produces the child. The male's the role is not a very active one in that sense, because he just sort of gives the permission, and the creation is actually done by the feminine aspect. But there is no gender at the highest level, that is certain. But that's why he used the word consort. And this truth is so fundamental that all the gods have got consorts. Okay? They have got their wives. Indra has got his wife, Varuna has got his wife. There are two aspects, consciousness and force. Okay, so he's saying, if you experience only the Brahman consciousness, he's not using the word Brahman, but that's what it means, because immobile, static and inactive, then you see the physical world as mechanical action. He's doing everything, takes a stand on the fixed, Maya able to effectuate all its conceptions, a dynamic consort of the self of silence. Self of silence, again the Brahman consciousness, okay, is doing everything. It takes its stand on the fixed, unmoving, eternal status and casts the spiritual substance of being into all manner of forms and movements to which its passivity consents, or in which it takes its impartial pleasure, its immobile delight of creative and mobile existence. Three possibilities, he is saying. So, you are in the consciousness of the static and you see the physical world creating everything. The force is creating everything. consciousness force is creating everything. And it is Maya. Mechanically it is going on creating everything. But with the permission of the silent self. The silent self is allowing the force to do whatever it wants. At the Brahman consciousness level, you may not see the consent, you may not see the permission being given. It seems to be a little dislocated. But as you keep going higher and higher, you will see that there is a permission being given. It's a passive consent.
The S is all cap here. Self of silence.
Self of silence. The silence is the self, the experience of the self, Atman. You can also, Brahman consciousness can also be, the word self can be used, because it seems to be your own self, which is infinite. Okay, so cast the spiritual substance. You see, that spiritual substance is the Sat, the ether that we spoke about. Okay, that's the spiritual substance. It is casting it into all manner of forms and movements to which its passivity consents. The consent can be passive or it can be active also, but that activity comes later on. Actively you can consent. This is also the experience that you have, a yogic experience, when your soul goes out into the spiritual planes of consciousness and you see your body, mind, life, the shell that you are here, doing everything, but now you realize that the soul itself has allowed the body, mind, life to do whatever it is doing. Okay, it may be doing something right or wrong. Right and wrong again is relative, but it is doing because you yourself have consented for that. All the habits that you have got, all the action that you are doing has been allowed by the soul. Why? Because it has to acquire experience. And only if you have experience of something, you know what it is. Okay, so that's what he's saying. So, you are in a condition which is absolutely static, inactive, silent, and the world is in moving and casting and making all sorts of forms. Okay? So, to which passivity consents or in which it takes its impartial pleasure. That's another thing. It could be that you are completely unconnected with the world, or it could be that you are enjoying whatever is being done here. He's saying the impartial pleasure. Note the word impartial. It's not pleasure at our level. Impartial means it is enjoying everything, good and bad. Again, relative terms. Okay? I may like sweets, I may not like bitter. At that level, if I am there, I will enjoy everything impartially. I will enjoy both. Okay? This is a very important concept, because morality then disappears. Because if you are enjoying everything impartially, without judgment, there is no morality at that level. Morality is at the mental level. Okay, so impartial pleasure. You have to understand the word impartial correctly. There is no partial. You are not leaning towards the good and rejecting the bad. No, you are not. You are just watching everything. Everything has got only impersonal values. White, blue, red, green. They are just colors. You can't say that green is better than red. There is no good and bad there. Absolutely impartial pleasure. That's why I use the word witness consciousness. You're just watching everything. Either you enjoy or you don't enjoy. This is a experience which he has told he has expressed in the Life Divine elsewhere, the first itself. When your consciousness rises and goes into the Brahman consciousness, the first level of the spiritual planes of consciousness, you can call it self, you can call it witness, you can call it the Atman. Two possibilities. Either you are totally unconnected with the world and the world seems to be only mechanical, unconscious, silhouetted forms, or you may be in a cosmic consciousness and then you will start enjoying everything. That also is possible.
And to change things, to change what is happening in the world?
You are enjoying everything impartially. But the world is not unreal. That's what he's saying. For Sri Aurobindo, he had a very interesting experience in Baroda. He had the experience of the world being unreal. There was no emotion at all, no enjoyment, nothing at all. Absolute calm, peace and quiet and detachment. The world is unreal. But he waited. He said that I can't accept that this is the final reality. I'll wait and see. So when he waited a little more, that silence started filling, and he had other experiences also. The world as real also he had. Okay, we go to the next sentence. Impartial pleasure, it's immobile delight of creative and mobile existence. Now, immobile delight of creative and mobile existence. The existence is the substance. It is creative and it is in movement. The physical world is always in movement. There is no movement at the other higher levels of consciousness. They are all static. That's why there is no evolution there. There is evolution only in the physical world. Whether this be a real or an illusory existence, that must be its substance and significance. So it depends on how you are seeing it. It can be real, you can experience it as real, or an illusory existence. He is repeating what he said earlier, but he puts it more graphically in the Life Divine elsewhere. He says that when you go out of your body into the spiritual levels of consciousness, I am repeating what I said. Either you are in a consciousness which you see the world as unreal and in movement, or you enter into the cosmic consciousness where you are participating and enjoying the everything, pleasure and all, everything you are enjoying, but impartially. No liking and disliking. No approving of something and disapproving of something. Absolutely calm and quiet. Witness. You're just watching and enjoying. I told you first, remember, there was no enjoyment at all. It was just a peace and calm, detachment. Whether this be real or an illusory, that must be substance and significance. Consciousness is at play with being. This is described beautifully in Savitri. Purusha and Prakriti are constantly enjoying and playing with each other. They're exchanging eyes, as he says in Savitri.
The two who are one.
Yes, the two who are one are the right and the might in things. That's right. So, we can also see that in another way, this play of Purusha and Prakriti, what he is talking about. In the physical world, there is only force. Or we see it as that. Matter is energy. There is only the play of atoms and electrons, it's a play of energy. There doesn't seem to be any consciousness in it. But there is consciousness at a very, very low level. You can say in matter, force is 99.9%. It's a way of speaking. And consciousness is there but doesn't seem to be. So it is 0.0001%.
As in the stone.
Yes, exactly. As in minerals also. Okay? But you can extract that energy. Then when you come to life, consciousness is beginning to show itself. And force is becoming less and less. As you come to mind, the consciousness is even more apparent and the force has become relatively less. Okay? You don't have the force that the nuclear energy has. You don't have that. It becomes less. So they are inversely proportional to each other until you go to the level of the silent self, the witness consciousness, where consciousness seems to be full, but you have no power. The power is all down there, moving about unconsciously. So now at that level of the witness self, the Brahman consciousness, your consciousness is 99.999 and the power is 0.001. It is there, but it is not active. It's like water behind the dam. Okay? The power is there, but it is held back. Or we can use the other image also of the horses about to start their race. It's not that they're powerless, they are full of power, but they're waiting, static. But there is power held back. So that's it. But as you go to the highest level, both are at full play, consciousness and force. This is the experience of the Brahman Purusheshwara Maya Prakriti Shakti. Okay? I read the next sentence. Whether this be real or illusory, we read that. That must be substance and significance. Consciousness is at play with being. Force of nature does what it wills with existence. So force is taking matter and making forms. It makes a form, it makes stones, it makes mountains, it makes rivers, it makes the sky, it is doing everything, whatever it wants. So many things. It is making forms with the substance which is there available to it. Force of nature does what it wills with existence and makes it the stuff of our creations. But secretly, the consent of the being must be there at every step to make this possible. Consciousness has to be there. Otherwise, it will be a chaotic creation. Only force creating will be chaotic. This is interesting. They give the example of put a monkey on a typewriter and let him hit the keys. Only force. What are the chances that he will produce something meaningful? If he is conscious, then that can be something. So consciousness has to always consent to the force doing what it is. Then it will be meaningful and it will be ordered and there will be a system. Otherwise it will be a chaos. Okay, so that's what he is being saying. Secretly the consent of the being must be there at every step to make this possible. There is an evident truth in this perception of things. It is what we see happening everywhere in us and around us. So, in us is psychological and around us is in the physical world. Okay, so both are there. It's a truth of the universe and must answer to a fundamental truth aspect of the absolute. The fundamental truth aspect of the absolute is Chit Shakti, consciousness force at the highest level. When they come down here, whatever we see happening here has a sanction of that, and because there is consciousness and force there. Here, down here, they seem to be separate, but they are always in conjunction with each other. Okay, that's what he's saying. But when we step back from the outer dynamic appearance of things, not into a witness silence, but into an inner dynamic participating experience of the spirit, we find that this consciousness force, Maya Shakti, is itself the power of the being, self-existence, the Ishvara. So, as I said, if you are in the Brahman consciousness, force seems to be impersonal and mechanical. If you are in the Purusha consciousness, the force is mechanical action. Brahman consciousness, the world is unreal. Okay? In the Purusha consciousness, the world is not unreal, but it is mechanical action. At the Ishvara level, this, what you saw as unreal and what you saw as mechanical force is actually the force of the divine at the highest level. That is what he's saying in the chapter. So, the being is Lord of her, being is the Supreme, Purushottama, is Lord of her and of all things. We see him doing everything in his own sovereignty as the creator and ruler of his own manifestation. This is at the highest level, the Purushottama consciousness or the Ishvara consciousness or the supermind consciousness. Basically that's the same. Because until you enter the supermind consciousness, Purusha and Prakriti seem to be separate. Srivamta had that problem also in the overmind consciousness, he had that problem. So when you get glimpses of the supermind, then you understand the reality of the whole thing. So the being is Lord of her. Who is the her? Prakriti, force of all things. We see him doing everything in his own sovereignty as a creator and ruler of his own manifestation. Or if he stands back and allows freedom of action to the forces of nature and her creatures, his sovereignty is still innate in the permission. At every step, his tacit sanction, let it be so, tathastu, is there implicit. This is reminiscent of God saying, let there be light, and there was light. The permission has to be given by the consciousness, and then the execution takes place. So that's exactly what he's saying. Okay. Is implicit, for otherwise nothing could be done or happen. Being and its consciousness force, spirit and nature cannot be fundamentally dual. We'll dwell on this a little bit. Buddhism says they are different. Spirit and matter are completely different. Other philosophies also say that, and they escape from there. In India, the tradition of the ascetic, denying the reality of the physical world and escaping into the higher regions, is very, very common in India. Okay, of course, the idea that the world is real also was there, but in actual practice, they were always practicing leave the world. It is full of wrong vibrations and perversities and falsehoods and death. Why do you want to have anything to do with it? Swamdeva is insisting that both are real and both are connected. Okay, he's saying being and consciousness force, spirit and nature cannot be fundamentally dual. They have to be only one. They are, he uses the word bayun. Bayun doesn't mean two, it means two in one. So, like triune, three things seeming separate, but they are actually one. Okay, so there is fundamentally, cannot be fundamentally dual. What nature does is really done by the spirit. This too is a truth that becomes evident when we go behind the veil and feel the presence of a living reality which is everything and determines everything, is the all-powerful and the all-ruler. This too is a fundamental aspect of the truth aspect of the absolute. Again, we can give an example to ourselves about this, what he is saying here. Even in the physical world, we have used that image earlier also. The chief executive officer of a company decides the policy and lays down certain broad lines of action, and the rest of it is executed by the assistant managers or the managers, and further down even the supervisors. The divine is not interfering directly in he allows nature to do whatever it wants, but he is laying down the broad laws and saying creation will take place, details you look after, but these are the laws. So that's exactly what he's saying, that this is what happens. When it comes down, it seems as though the divine is not acting, but he has given his permission for the action to take place. That completes the paragraph. Again, if we remain absorbed in the silence, in the static consciousness, the creative consciousness and her works disappear into the silence. I am only reading. Nature and the creation for us cease to exist or be real. On the other hand, if we look exclusively at the being in its aspect of the sole existent person and ruler, the power or Shakti by which it does all things disappears into his uniqueness or becomes an attribute of his cosmic personality. The absolute monarchy of the one being becomes our perception of the universe. Both these experiences create many difficulties for the mind due to its non-perception of the reality of the self-power, whether in quiescence or in action, or to a too exclusively negative experience of the self, or to the too anthropomorphic character our conceptions attach to the Supreme Being as ruler. It is evident that we are looking at an infinite of which the self-power is capable of many movements, all of them valid. If we look again more largely and take account of both the impersonal and the personal truth of things as one truth, if in that light, the light of personality in impersonality, we see the biune aspect of self and self-power. Then, in the person aspect, a dual person emerges. In the person aspect, a dual person emerges. Ishvara Shakti, the divine self and creator, and the divine mother and creatrix of the universe. There becomes apparent to us the mystery of the masculine and feminine cosmic principles, whose play and interaction are necessary for all creation. In the superconscious truth of the self existence, these two are fused and implied in each other, one and indistinguishable. But in the spiritual pragmatic truth of the dynamism of the universe, they emerge and become active. The divine mother energy as the universal creatrix, Maya, Para Prakriti, Chit Shakti, manifests the cosmic self, and Ishvara manifests the cosmic self and Ishvara and her own self power as a dual principle. It is through her that the being, the self, the Ishvara acts, and he does nothing except by her. Though his will is implicit in her, it is she who works out all the supreme consciousness force, who holds all souls and beings within her and as executive nature. All exists and acts according to nature. All is a consciousness force manifesting and playing with the being in millions of forms and movements into which he casts his existence. If we draw back from her workings, then all can fall into quiescence and we can enter into the silence because she consents to cease from her dynamic activity. But it is in her quiescence and silence that we are quiescent and cease. If we would affirm our independence of nature, she reveals to us the supreme and omnipresent power of the Ishvara and ourselves as beings of his being. But that power is herself, and we are that in her supernature. If we would realize the higher formation or status of being, then it is still through her, through the divine Shakti, the consciousness force of the spirit, that it has to be done. Our surrender must be to the divine being through the divine mother. For it is towards or into the supreme nature that our ascension has to take place, and it can only be done by the supramental Shakti taking up our mentality and transforming it into her supramentality. Thus we see that there is no contradiction or incompatibility between these three aspects of existence, or between them in their eternal status and the three modes of its dynamics working in the universe. One being, one reality as self, bases, supports, informs as Purusha or conscious being experiences, as Ishvara wills, governs and possesses its world of manifestation, created and kept in motion and action by its own consciousness force or self-power. Maya, Prakriti, Shakti.
One question then for everyone. If everything is done through the Divine Mother, and we pray to the Divine Mother, what is Sri Aurobindo's action in us?
He is sanctioning, he is supporting the action of the mother. In fact, that's exactly what happened in the ashram.
Yes.
Sri Aurobindo is telling mother to run the ashram. She is the one who created all the departments. Sri Aurobindo is not creating the departments at all. But his sanction is there and he is agreeing to whatever she does, and he has permitted her to do everything in the physical world. But she says very clearly that without him,
I exist not.
I exist not. And without me, he will be unmanifest.
Yes.
So this key sentence explains the whole relation between Purusha and Prakriti. Without him, I exist not. That's words. And without me, he will remain unmanifest. There will be no creation.
Thank you, Ranga. Namaste. Namaste.